So what is Datawise London? So our mission there is to help unlock the value of data. I think value would have been my word if Sorrel had asked me. So what do we mean by that in terms of our work supporting and as a kind of infrastructure program? So improving use of data. And it's really important, this bit, the small local charities and community organisations in London. So that's been our focus and our audience, but importantly, so that they can better shape services and influence change. And kind of rounding that off for the benefit of Londoners. We'll see where that's come from in a moment. So we've got a website, so you can, the links there on the slide, you can go and find out more in more detail about the program there. So yeah, a little bit of background. Where did this come from? So some of you might know that as Superhighways leading this program, our core work previously really had been around digital support for that same audience. We ran a 5-year program called Impact Allowed, which was helping small charities and community groups better capture and communicate their impact. And what we found through that program was that yes, digital tools are important, but actually there was a kind of fundamental lack of data literacy. So we were picking up that it was fine to introduce all these digital tools, but the kind of at the heart of the matter was how organisations were using and analysing data as well. We also partnered with a couple of other organisations to do a data support project for refugee and migrant organisations funded by the GLA. So we got some more experience there. And then this coincided with the Way Ahead initiative. So I'm sure most people here will know about that, and kind of looking at how can we support a thriving civil society going forwards. And what we discovered was there wasn't any holistic data support programs pitched at those smaller charities and community organisations. So we decided that was where we were going to go, and look to pull something together. Hence, Datawise London was born. We put in a proposal to the Cornerstone Fund, and we were actually funded by City Bridge Trust for a 2-year programme. And the Cornerstone Fund was looking for partnerships and innovative ways of working, collaboration, and obviously sitting across that programme was looking at systems change. So we'll have a look at that in a bit. So yeah, we knew this wasn't something we could do on our own, so we looked to form a partnership. So we've got 5 amazing organisations there that bring different strengths, skills, reach. DataKind UK obviously have data expertise and a community of data scientists. So we brought them on board. Coalition for Efficiency have experience around impact. They're kind of coming from an impact management and measurement place. And then Here Network London Plus, for obvious reasons. Here Network in particular to help us reach different kinds of organisations, and London Plus and their connections with the CVS network as well. We are also collaborating quite closely with the GLA, so I would say they're a kind of 6th organisation in the mix. And just quickly, we did launch in October 2019. And since then, it's quite a large programme. We've run 57 events, so that could be training or talks. And we have reached quite a high number of individuals and organisations, and kind of covered across London. And we'll have a little bit of a look at our data later. But our initial challenge was how are we going to engage these small groups? We know, we get excited about data, but how do we start that conversation with smaller organisations and kind of bring them along with us? Sorrel's going to.
Yeah, so just quickly before we move on to the next section, we thought we'd ask you if you were kind of putting on a programme to encourage small organisations to move away from using data for monitoring purposes, but to actually shape their service and influence, what would that program need? What would it need to do? Or what kind of exercises or workshops? So I think we'll stop sharing, and we're quite a small group, so I think we can do this together. So any ideas, what would you think would work? Yeah, Maxine.
Without any doubt, a person alongside the organisation. The small organisations we work with just don't have, it's just a lack of time. And so I just think another body in that space would help massively in terms of just moving it away from monitoring.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Maxine. Yes, that extra kind of capacity as well as capability, which can help. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Anybody else would like to offer? You can also stick them in chat if you've got any ideas, if you don't want to come on.
And just a quick hello to Amy and Agnieszka. I think you've joined us. So we're just kind of setting the scene a little bit for our programme.
Hi, sorry, I'm so late.
That's okay.
Don't worry.
Don't worry at all. We're just kind of think of if you were to run your own kind of capacity building program, if you wanted small, very small local charities and community organizations to use their data, not just for monitoring purposes, but to actually do something with that data, how would you inspire them? How would you motivate them? What would that capability program or capacity building program actually look like? So any ideas for motivating that change? Yeah, I don't know who went up first then. I had, I'm going to go with Claire.
Yeah, I might have a slightly biased perspective because I actually work with DataKind, or volunteer with DataKind with the office hours, where we see a lot of charities that come with their data needs. So these are charities that are already keen to improve their data process.
Yeah.
So that might already be a bit of a selection. But I feel that often it's time consuming. So I agree with, like, how can we use like better processes and tech to support that, you know, like to avoid that sort of overwhelming, it takes me 3 weeks to put a monthly report together. And a capacity building on how to use the tools that exist in a more efficient way, I think would be quite life-saving for some analysts.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like quick wins and showing the value with like the identifying that low-hanging fruit, often just like showing how attendance data can be used to show, you know, success of programs and how you can measure whether your programs are successful with like repeat attendance or this kind of like quite easy metrics. I feel like often makes quite a big impact because it's like relatively easy data to collect and relatively easy kind of message to convey, which helps with buy-in.
Yeah, really good ideas, Claire. And yeah, definitely it's kind of that mix of tools, techniques, simpler processes, and kind of easy ways of using the information and asking questions of the information you've got. Yeah, and realizing the value of what you've already collected. Yeah, brilliant.
I spotted Rose's mention real life examples, and yeah, I think that's something, picking those examples that other organizations can see that an organization in a kind of similar size, kind of similar capacity and resource, where they've had success, and kind of use that as a kind of channel for inspiration and kind of helping other people to see there's a journey they can start somewhere.
Yeah, brilliant. James, we'll come to you next.
I think Rose has beat me to it, to be honest. I was just going to say, if there's opportunities for peer learning, we've had some conversations with grant holders, and they've really appreciated we've done some focus groups and things like that, and they've really appreciated the chance to exchange experiences, learn from one another, and perhaps if there were more opportunities for small organizations to do that, they might be able to filter out those sort of data expeditions that just send you down, rabbit holes, and filter those ones out and use the ones that have worked for other people, as Rosa was mentioning.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a really good point, James. And we've also both taken part in and facilitated the kind of bigger data expeditions, and know that that process just isn't suitable for lots of small groups in actually making changes for themselves. Although it can be useful, of course, collaboratively to look at a topic across a kind of a wider local area, for example. Yeah, brilliant. All great ideas, cracking ideas. Hopefully we'll show that we've used some of this and incorporated some of this into our programs. Brilliant. So I'm just going to share my screen and talk to you a little bit about what we actually did. So we start out with, we're going to share a little bit about what we call our data essentials recipe. What this means is we have a huge program of one-to-one advice and support, a large training program. But what it essentially starts with is, well, what are the data essentials? And we have a workshop that's our Kickstarter, and all of our other courses spin off from this particular session. So that session is about encouraging curiosity. We ask people, what is data? What does data mean to you? And get people to think about what they're actually collecting. And we ask them the same question, which I'm going to come on to in a moment, that we asked you at the beginning. And we run through kind of basics of data collection, but also what do you do with it? Starting to think about some data analysis, how it links to theory of change, importantly, looking at external data sources, asking them what's their hunch, what is the thing that they think is happening in their service that they'd love to explore a bit further or ask questions of. And then, of course, we look at, well, actually, stories are a really important part of this. A lot of people will come up with the idea of numbers and information, but forget about the human context, which is actually something they're really good at. But actually, how do you start collecting some of that information in a more meaningful way, and pointing them in the direction of the data maturity assessment and framework? And we do a little bit more of that in our cohort work rather than in this session. And all of these spin off into additional training courses. So it was great to hear you talking about some case study examples. I'm going to mention one in a moment, but for example, our Excel bite-size series, which is very technical, practical workshops to help people think about really analyzing their data effectively. We use a kind of made up, but based on a real charity data set and story that we follow all the way through that Excel course over the 5 sessions to really bring to life what that means for the choices and decisions that you would actually make in your service. And we adapted all of this from in-person to online. So we've got experience of doing these in both settings. We ask the same question in every data essentials session we run. We says, what do the word data mean to you? Information came up earlier. You can see a kind of a big range of what people think that is, and some great ideas. And there's some ones which didn't quite make the cut here because they weren't mentioned as much, and it's been interesting watching that change over time. And that might be scary or sleepy. There were some other questions
OMG,
there. I think OMG. Yeah, there was some, really kind of. I think it's what we remembered, and where this program comes from is saying, well, actually, some people's experience of particularly in the kind of statistical or that part of data, the numbers part of data, people actually don't always have very good experience of maths or their school, or they think that it's going to be so complicated they're not going to be able to do it. You're actually dealing with people's personal kind of fears and worries and conceptions about what they're capable of too.
Interestingly, we don't have power or powerful on. I can't spot that. Yeah.
But usefulness, intelligence, this kind of there's definitely an evidence, of course, and
Discovery.
insight. So just interesting to compare there. We also asked them what are their biggest challenges, and these are some of the challenges that come up. They're quite common, and these are just a few, but it's that trying to make sense of it, and how do we get information from people without being intrusive and asking the right questions, but down to the functional stuff. So Excel, that filtering out what do we actually use, collating it into something useful. And that's some of these, in fact, all of these questions we try and answer with the training and the workshops and the sessions that we bring people together on. So we're going to ask you another question that we ask our groups. So we're going to drop this into chat now, and then let's have a quick comparison again about how you and groups may feel differently. It's a little snapshot data. So Kate's going to drop that link into chat.
Yeah, so if you click on that Menti link, it should open up for you in a browser. Yeah, I can see the questions. So we just ask you to pick your top 3, which is what we ask the groups.
Yes, so give us a shout if you're not there, or if you're having any technical problems at all, and we'll do our best to help. Otherwise, I'm going to flip to make sure that we're presenting here. So let me just come here and present. So everybody should be getting there now. Oops. Just go there. Oops. And come out of here. Bear with me 1 second. There we go.
This is so hard to pick 3.
I know.
I kind of want to throw another one in the mix as well.
Oh, there could be stuff missing. Yeah, all suggestions welcome. But yeah, if you absolutely had to, I know it's an awful thing to do to you. So sorry.
I think we're replicating the choices that there was a big survey of how the social sector uses data in 2016, which kind of led to the data maturity framework. So we've kind of gone with those questions. So it's a bit of a benchmark.
And they're coming in. We've got 11.
Yeah, I did it by accident, actually. So that's probably everybody.
That's everybody. Excellent. So you chose, so we've got, the biggest, we can see the winner here, strategic planning and decision making, closely followed by measuring outcomes and impact, and learning and evaluating what you do. So that's what they should be using it for. I mean, I know we've got others coming up, and actually interesting to see predicting user needs and service options. So that kind of really thinking ahead to what's needed. What have we learned? That naturally follows on from learning and evaluating. What are we looking at next? Where might we go next? Really interesting. Thank you for doing that, everybody. I'm going to now flick to show you what we've collated this information over the last 18 months. So again, showing what the top results were. It's going to look different because we've got a bar chart on its side. So it will look slightly different in terms of how we presented it, but hopefully we can pick out the top 3 easily. So just bear with me 1 second. And we'll come back. So this is our group's top 3. And as you can see here,
and this is what they actually use, rather than, yes, we didn't pose the question, what should they use data for? This question was, what do they actually use their data?
Yeah, this is what do you use it for? So you can see here that measuring outcomes and impact, understandably a top one. And contract and funder reporting is high. In fact, I almost, when it was collated, expected it to be slightly higher, but it comes up every time, and recording activities and work with clients. So you can see the groups that are coming along when we first asked them this at Data Essentials are in that kind of mission. We need to collect this to understand our impact, but it's about reporting to the fundings, and sometimes much more basic than that. It's about recording the activities and work. We've actually got to get the data in through the door, and that's what is important to them. Predicting user needs and service options, that's probably one of the lowest down the list. And learning and evaluating what you do. Yeah, we've got some answers. Yeah, some people are definitely doing that. And we've got a range of people that come to Data Essentials. So that some of them might be infrastructure organizations, some of them every now and again might be a funder, and sometimes the majority would be frontline. So that's an interesting one, maybe for a topic for conversation later. Moving on to our next exercise. So that's just a couple of things, obviously, that we do during our sessions. We do look at data, what they're actually collecting. We do this on a Jamboard, and we get them to think about what they're actually collecting against those 4 types of data. And it's quite good for us because we can pick up on where their understanding of data is, as well as to whether they think something's service or feedback. We move things around and talk about where they sit, and maybe frequencies of how stuff is collected, and also how So we have a good conversation and give them tools and resources to take back to their team so that they can do this and think about how much they're actually collecting of this and how valuable it is or not. And we also then explore a hunch. So we say we've got a case study, this is a real life case study of a small carers organisation, a local carers organisation that with their young carers, their hunch is they think that young people from the south of a borough are not accessing the youth evening club activity that they're running. And so we pose this question to the group, and then we ask them to think about, well, what data would you need to understand whether that's happening and make a change? So we get them to really try and think about that. And then we ask them to formulate their own hunches by the end of the session. So these are the sorts of things that they start to come out with is, actually, I'm questioning, well, what are we doing here? And here's just some examples. Not engaging with many young adults in the borough. The services might be different. We are supporting people. So making it as a statement, we need to test, are we actually supporting people from the most vulnerable or deprived wards in our area? And quickly, just on something else we do in the session, this is a real introduction, and it really is a basic introduction to data sources, using external data sources. So we give them a quiz to do, but we send them off into groups to go and have a look at this and say, well, we give them some questions to go and answer, and we give them the London poverty profile. And the reason we do that, and it was really good, Claire, you were talking earlier about this, about accessibility of tools. The reason we give them this tool to build their confidence is because it's already formatted in quite a friendly, user-friendly way that people can use. So it's a good entry level data source to go and look at, whereas some of the others are almost impenetrable unless you're a researcher. Over to you, Kate.
Okay.
Oh, your sound's dropped, Kate.
Ah,
you're back.
okay. I mustn't move. I was just trying to multitask and drop the link to the dashboard into chat, but just quickly, just to give you an idea, we have tried to practice what we preach, and we've brought all the data together in terms of what we've been delivering and who's accessing that. So Sorrel mentioned collating some of the what is data and how people are using data questions that we pose in the session. So actually we've had over 260 people attending those data essentials sessions now. We've run 13 open ones. We started pre-pandemic, we've carried that on, but also something that's worked really well for us, and we were really keen to explore this further, potentially with some of you here, is partnering with other organisations to bring this data essentials session either to grantees, or you'll see on the right hand side, we've been, our model very much has always been to work through CVSs and other infrastructure organisations, so kind of bringing what we've developed and delivering in partnership. So that's also helped us reach different kinds of organisations. If you remember, our kind of the aim was to reach those much smaller ones. So partnering with Evelyn Oldfield Unit, for example, was a good way to reach smaller BAMER organisations. So you can explore the data. We've been learning by doing with Power BI ourselves, but just to give you a bit of a snapshot about what kind of organisations we've reached. So yeah, the majority, 75% frontline, 60% under 250k. I think that's 80% across that whole piece under 500k. So we are there's an appetite from these smaller organisations, and it's really nice to see that. Obviously we've worked hard to kind of engage and kind of develop a session for them in mind. But yeah, you can explore that data yourselves in your own time. And again, mainly it's those local organisations. So what about the feedback? Because we've rerun the session lots of times, it has been quite iterative, and we have been able to respond to what people are telling us, but just a couple of quotes from people that have been on the session. We collect this in our post-session evaluation, but it's nice to see that during COVID, we were looking at how we could also kind of tweak data essentials so that people were kind of talking about their use of data during that those this very different time. So nice to see that people are thinking about it would help them map out strategies post lockdown. And kind of, yeah, nice to see that we were making it accessible and easy to understand and kind of building that interactivity. And then making it fun. So I think, was it Geraldine that asked about that? So yeah, it was really good to kind of get that feedback that we'd worked hard to, that was our aim, and people did feel that we had kind of talked about data in a different way. We've since been following up, so it's kind of early days on this, but we're going back to everybody that attended Data Essentials because we're really interested to see not only what they said they were going to do next, which we do capture after the session, but what they actually did, and the outcomes that were achieved as a result. So we're going to be collecting and getting back much more in touch with people, but yeah, it's nice to see people more robustly evidenced their impact. They influenced internally, they shape services better. And then we were also interested not only in the learning of the individuals attending the sessions, but also how that translated into changes at an organisational level. So again, we're kind of at the early stages of collecting this information, but people, it's nice to see that people have been agreeing with these statements around organisations progressing use of data, using data to shape services and influencing. So we'll be following up to gather some more stories on that as well. And then just very quickly, because we want some time for discussion, but initially we did have a think about a structured curriculum of these data sessions, but actually we left it a bit looser, and we developed, as Sorrel said, a range of sessions that were kind of next steps on from Data Essentials. This is just an example of a data journey from a CVS. I think somebody's here from Redbridge Council. So this is the CVS. Somebody attended our launch and Data Essentials. And then we went on to do a larger piece of work supporting them to choose a database system. And what came out of that was identification that Excel skills were pretty low within the organisation, and yet that was a tool that they could really use much better to analyse the data that they had. So people have come onto the bite size. And then recently we took Data Essentials out to Redbridge for those groups. So that's one kind of journey example. Got another one just of a small borough-based organisation, Salisbury World. I don't know if anybody knows them. They're based in Brent. They work to support refugee and asylum seekers, families, young people and children. So another route. So Data Essentials, that building block. We also brought people along to talk about data sources. So they attended 2 of those talks. And then, yeah, a range of other sessions that we haven't gone into detail about today, but hopefully you can see the breadth of the training offer. So interviewing, telling stories, and then I've just done a one-to-one session with them looking at local insights data. We've just subscribed to that platform, so we're offering one-to-ones to explore the data there. And then we've told you about Data Essentials as the entry level into the programme. At the other end, the other extreme, is the data cohort programme. So we've been running that for 7 organisations taking part in a 10-month programme. So there have been 8 monthly day-long sessions. And they've been kind of working through a programme we'll see on the next slides. But really we were interested in this because we wanted to find out a little bit about the value of the peer learning element, but also, yeah, what could we achieve and what could those groups, how could they progress with their data maturity with this more kind of focused program over a longer period of time. So there's just the organisations that apply to be part of the cohort. At the Data for Good Festival, we heard from 2 of them talking about the kind of the impact that the program's had on their work. And this is just an idea of the structure. It's been very much a co-designed program, so each of those organisations have set their own goals and hunches, and we've kind of developed the program around those, but using this structure of discover, learn, analyse, shape and repeat. We've got our 8th session next Friday, and we're going to have a session in June for the organisations to reflect and share. So yeah, we're interested in kind of looking at the learning from that and then repeating that cohort in future. We did a bit more of a formalized benchmarking for that program. So we did get all of the organizations to complete the data maturity assessment. This is just a snapshot of the overall score. So some of you might know there are 7 themes within the data maturity assessment, and it was definitely, Sorrel, you have to help me, tools, analysis and skills that were the lower across the board, the areas that came out that weaker, and that's what we've kind of again developed the program around.
So something to kind of think about, and we do constantly at Superhighways, because we're bigger than the Datawise London programme. We're essentially a digital, an organisation that tries to help holistically all small organisations with their digital and data needs, and they really go together. Now you can find your own analogy, but for me it was a bit like tea and biscuits. How can you have a cup of tea without a biscuit? You could consider it soap and water. It could be the plumbing in an organisation. You can't have data without the digital, and that's a really important thing to remember. And that requires its own additional skills and training and programs that are beyond data, because it takes more than data to run an organisation. And something that so we were keen to do is to explore some of this. We held a roundtable with a funder of another programme of ours, National Lottery Community Fund, to look at our the pandemic support that we'd provided. And we had a roundtable discussion with the funder, but also about 20 local charities and community organisations to talk about what their experiences were of particularly digital, but a lot came up in conversation around data and how they'd started to kind of really see the value of and start using data in their work. We kind of drew those themes together, quantified them, we did some sentiment analysis, and this actually led to a blog which we'll drop the link into, and you'll be able to go and read. So this is some early lessons from the pandemic from our roundtable, but also the wider digital program that we ran over a 6-month period. And it did lead to a consultation meeting with the Director of Digital Third Sector Transformation at the Scottish Government. Of course, if it had been Westminster, that would have been even better for us. But I think this is something everybody's interested in. And this was particularly looking at digital inclusion, which is another area of our work. But they just go hand in hand, and you have to consider both of those skills. It takes a basic infrastructure, and it takes basic digital skills development as well to make all of this happen.
Yeah, and I think for us it doesn't neatly fit into data projects that we run and digital projects. There is just so much of an overlap, and I guess that's yeah, where we can bring that wraparound support. Somebody comes to us with a data issue, but actually there's an underlying digital, or vice versa. So what next? Where are we? So we had a 2-year Cornerstone grant. We've actually had agreement. We have some underspend to carry that through. So we'll be over the next few months through to September, October, kind of not delivering so much. So yeah, I think that's there's been an element of us delivering a kind of flat out and responding to the pandemic, but really now we're kind of moving into a phase of consolidating that learning a little bit more, packaging the resources developed. So we've developed lots in-house, and we know there's an opportunity to share those much more widely and start to think about yeah, the Excel bite size Sorrel alluded to. We've now got that as a self-serve rather than instructor-led, kind of in real time. Creating or making accessible data tools, so that's something something again that we'd picked up. So we've been involved in feeding into a new data tool that's been developed via the Data Collective and the Catalyst. I can drop a link in because it's really useful, something for you to share with your grantees maybe. And then, yeah, across that partnership, we've been doing lots of other joint working. So we've, for example, supported two really small organisations to access a DataKind data dive. So we're kind of exploring the idea of a data dive light that might be more accessible for smaller organisations. So kind of looking at these different spin-offs, really. And then we have been partnering with other funders. So we have just started a 3-year support programme for Trust for London. Primarily they're grantees, although it's wider, but that's interesting because actually we're realising that we need to take a step backwards even from the Data Essentials session, where groups are very small, grassroots, you know, that they haven't started their data journey, and it's kind of really simplifying further. And then, yeah, we've run some sessions for other funders. Most recently for the GLA, their community-led recovery programme grantees, Sorrel and I ran a session on qualitative data analysis yesterday in the morning with one of our Coalition for Efficiency partners. So, yeah, we've got loads of ideas. I think we feel that we've developed lots. There's lots of potential for that to reach a wider audience, to partner and kind of customize. Yeah, we're hoping you've got thoughts, questions and ideas. So we've got some time now I can see, we'll probably stop sharing. Our contact details are on the last slide. Yeah, anybody want to kick off? James, do you want to, I spotted your question, which is the, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you'd come across any differences between perhaps the very smallest organizations that you're working with and ones that are, you know, closer to 500k turnover, because that's, you know, quite an enormous difference if you're just sort of, you know, up to 10k. And so, yeah, I was just wondering if you'd noticed any differences in any aspect of this, what their needs were, what their capacities were, what, you know, that how much they got out of the program by comparison, you know, yeah, any observations?
We can give observations. We can't give kind of hard data at this stage, partly because actually at the beginning of the program we weren't actually collecting that data. That's something that we started doing because, yeah, we noticed that well, we understood that it would be good to kind of delve into that a little bit more. I mean, so more anecdotally then, I think that there's probably not a defined difference, and sometimes it's about the people. So having somebody that and sometimes in a smaller organization, actually you've maybe got less of a hierarchy and more of a kind of autonomy to move things forward. So we've seen successes across that scale. Whether there's a specific pattern, I think definitely the very small groups and maybe the new groups, again, this is a little bit of a generalization right now, that's probably where we see the link through with digital as being a bit more of a, you know, we start having conversations and, you know, maybe some of these organizations aren't registered charities, they haven't had the opportunity to access the fully donated Microsoft or Google program. They don't have a proper, you know, basic digital infrastructure they're using. So suddenly you think that even some of those entry-level tools like using a Google or Office 365 form to start collecting data digitally, which is very often the first step for groups moving from paper to digital data collection, because that then opens up a whole opportunity in terms of analysis and starting to kind of delve into the data. You know, sometimes then that's hard because it holds things up. But equally, you might have an organization closer to 500, they've got a creaking database that doesn't work for them and it's harder to make a change. So there's challenges across the board, and but that's what we want to be doing a little bit more now, actually kind of delving into that.
And there's definitely something around teams. So we had a couple of groups that didn't go through the whole of the cohort process and dropped out. And from talking to them, sometimes what you end up with is which is quite common, I think, in the very smaller organizations, is a dynamic lead that perhaps has a greater capability. Unfortunately, their job is so wide, like they're the most capable person, and sometimes even in a position of being able to make the change, but because their team is so low skilled in certain digital and data areas, they're trying to bring people on board, and they just see it as too big a process to go through some of these data programs. So
right.
So they're keen to, and obviously we've had the pandemic over this whole period, so we've been delivering across a pandemic, really. So the person that really could do most of the work in this area is the one that's been pulled into making 5 million other decisions at the same time.
But there has been an appetite, I think, for asking us to we've started to facilitate team organizational sessions. So somebody has come along, there's a bit of a barrier for them to bring everybody on board, so they've maybe come back to us to ask for some help on that. So that's something we're developing a little bit more. Is it about starting to develop things for boards to discuss, for example, how do you introduce a conversation around better use of data at a board level?
How do you share your learning with your wider team as well? So if one person's come along to a session and is like, right, I'm really ready to do this, but there's quite a low level of digital skill or capability in data in another area, how best to share that without them also having to come on the session.
And I guess what we, especially with Data Essentials, we focused on exercises that they could easily take back and replicate within their team. But maybe that's maybe something for us to think about. How can we build support for internal data champions? And we've definitely been exploring the value of us convening spaces for that peer learning and support. So that's something that we'd like to explore further as well. We did it quite a lot in terms of digital. We brought together CVSs and other organisations, particularly in the digital inclusion space, but there could be a program for people trying to kind of take data forward so they can network and support each other as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Claire, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm having to drop out in literally a minute, but I guess I find all of this super fascinating. I'm really impressed with the work you've achieved, and I'd be really keen to hear more in the future. I think one of my questions was how much of this could be productizable, which seems that is something you're thinking about in terms of like packaging it.
Yeah.
And the other question is like kind of on the other end of the scale would be how much of this is actually facilitating funding for training on some of the resources that already exist. Like how much could we create a kind of group buying for training on simply how to use Excel, leveraging what already exists, which wouldn't be targeted at all to the charity sector. But I think especially I'm thinking of volunteer-led organizations. When you volunteer, it's nice that you get something out of it. And so if you could get some like skills, maybe that's something that could be an area, but I don't know if it's at all relevant to what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. That's a really good suggestion. And it's something that we're looking at with two of our partners. So I think both DataKind and looking at Coalition for Efficiency. Coalition for Efficiency, who run the Measuring the Good program. So you've got an impact program that's volunteer delivered. But that's typically around impact. Can we build the data element in and give those products and those exercises and templates and resources? Can we help kind of give that to volunteers to be able to be part of the mix and the conversation all the way through the program that they join? And also looking at things like with DataKind, we've talked quite frequently. I think we're starting to think about how can we bring individual data analysts into organizations rather than just bringing whole teams together to do the kind of bigger data dives, which suits the larger organizations with bigger data sets.
Yeah, something in between their office hours, but also, yeah, spotting that it's not always the high, there's much more basic kind of data support that's needed before organizations reach that point. Something we didn't touch on, I mean, maybe we can send, Grace, I think we can probably send, there's other bits of the program we didn't touch on, something that might interest you as funders, as well as our work on putting together a toolkit to help organizations choose and implement a database, because that's something that we find organizations really struggle with. So we've done a really focused piece of work. We've done a blog, but there's there's more that we want to do. So again, there could be an opportunity for a number of funders to kind of have a look at that and see where that can go next. We've kind of made a really good start. We've created some resources to help people have that somebody who's leading from it within an organization on that on a project. We've kind of provided a framework, 7-step kind of process that can help them, but there's definitely more that we could do with that piece of work as well. I'm trying to look for the link to the blog. I think we're probably almost at time. Is there anything else?
Yeah, any final kind of reflections or thoughts? Or I don't know if we answered Geraldine's question about how fun we make it, but I think it's a mixture of fun. We do lots of exercises that introduce them to digital tools at the same time as discussing data, and I think that's the crucial bit. We're constantly building in kind of fun places to go and try out to help them be as familiar with as many products as possible. And that kind of in itself stimulates lots of discussion and fun and interaction, because just having a webinar and slides, that's not how anyone learns to a degree. You've got to take part, you've got to be in the space. So, and
I guess again, yes, there's been lots of training sessions and these sessions, but we've also offered that one-to-one follow-up support, hand-holding. We know that to take that next step, a training session isn't always enough. So again, that's just something to kind of leave you with. I've just managed to multitask and drop in the link to that latest data tool. People can paste in some postcodes and it cross-references with the indices of multiple deprivation. So have a look at that as well.
It's absolutely brilliant. I love that.
Oh, brilliant. That's good to hear.
Really good.
Yeah, we've got some plans we've agreed with the Catalyst Data Kind and those developers. There will be a second tool coming, so we'll work on it in July. So brilliant.
So yeah, any final reflections, or we shall we'll head off and let you join your next sessions.
Thank you both so much. Oh, Maxine, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to say thanks. It's brilliant. Really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Thanks,
really brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm sure we can make sure everyone gets the slides if they're interested in those as well, and share on details. But thank you all for coming so much, and hopefully we'll see you at some more of our festival over the next few days.
Brilliant. Enjoy the festival, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.